camera right. There we go. Feels better.
Perfect. Welcome back, everybody, to the Fabric of Culture podcast. My next guest is somebody that I am super excited to talk about. Not only am I very passionate about the fashion industry, but love media and entertainment, and this episode will be at the intersection of both. So she has most recently been running costume design for the Bel Air revamp, but you will also see her work in things like the Coming to America sequel, the Equalizer sequel, Gone Girl, and a bunch of other TV shows and films. So without further ado, QueenSylvia Akuchie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Nick. I'm excited to be here and to share all the juicy things for this season.
Awesome, awesome. Well, let's start from the beginning because
Yeah.
like I think obviously in certain areas, like people are very well versed in costume design, but let's start from the beginning. Did you always know you wanted to go into fashion? What like did you kind of like fall into this? Where did it all stem from?
You know, it's funny. So I wanted to be a lawyer. And then kind of I wanted to work for the CIA. That's a whole thing in itself. And I always say not just fashion, but costume design found me actually. Just kind of like I am Nigerian. I'm a first generation American. So the creative arts was not an option for me. I didn't even know it existed. I grew up with either you're a lawyer or a doctor or engineer or accountant. That was kind of the only or
Those buckets.
pharmacist. Yeah, it was kind of if you didn't check that off, who were you? Sort of thing. And so I started my first project in music actually,
Okay.
and I was just assisting. And then I started doing research while I was in college, and I think I was watching um, Do the Right Thing. I know it was a movie that Ruth Carter had designed. This was in the early 2000s, maybe 2004 or 5 or something.
Mhm.
And I remember just the credits were on. I was with my college roommate, and we were just for some reason, I would never read the credits, but because I was so inspired to learn about the creative arts, I was just like, let me see what the fashion stylist does. I didn't even know the costume designer was a title. I didn't even know what. Then I saw it roll across the screen, and I like at the time um went to I'm like, did I have a laptop? I can't remember. Like I researched it on whatever device was available then. And I was like, Deanna, this is my roommate's name. This is a job. People get paid to put clothes on people. And so I found out that it was a career and kind of did some research, and the rest is kind of history. It just kind of found me. I found it, but it also found me because I lived in Atlanta at the time, and film wasn't really happening in Atlanta. This is before the boom, right? And so I kind of had to like put my name out there, my leg out there, just kind of like I started in music, and then the boom of film started to come to Atlanta, and so I started um a lot of my career as a costume designer at Tyler Perry Studios. And this kind of put one foot in front of the other and started to learn. And then kind of went back and did some more education on costume design and did some more creative art classes and that sort of thing. And here we are 20 years later.
Wow, that's amazing. And of course, like we talked about how I, became a fashion writer. But I think also, finding what you're passionate about and kind of getting in that groove. What a wonderful place to do it in Atlanta, right? Like the
Yeah.
black being able to
Yeah.
be around things and get exposed to other stuff. So
I mean, it was beautiful. The one thing about being so around, I went to HBCU. I went to two schools. I went to Clark Atlanta, and I went to Georgia State.
Mhm.
But the beautiful part of that is, I'm from DC, born and raised, and that in itself, and I didn't realize it at the time because I didn't know it was an option, but I was such a creative kid. I just thought I was just being creative and it was art and that's what you do and then you let it go. And so there was a lot of things in my youth that kind of led me to this. I just didn't know I was gonna be able to use it as an adult. So, it definitely was stepping stones to my creative footing. I've always been the creative child and done things a little bit different, you know? Although I do have that side of my brain that loves being smart. Like, my undergrad was in economics, right? I love a challenge. I love learning new things, and that sort of thing. But there was always like that missing link of being a creative that I didn't know existed that found me as an adult. So yeah.
G Okay, wonderful. No, I'm so glad it did. You had such an amazing opportunity very early on in your career to work with some of the biggest names in entertainment,
Yeah.
right? Lee Daniels, Todd Black, Tyler Perry. What
Mhm.
was it like working alongside them and just being able to get exposed to that very early in your career?
It's so interesting because I've always been so grateful and thankful of having these opportunities and just, my nickname was Green Mile, right? And that's just and it was a joke kind of like that people called me Green Mile, but it still meant so much because no matter what I did, I always said I was going to be the best.
Mhm.
And as a child, as like a 15 or 16-year-old, I think my first job ever was at a movie theater, coincidentally.
Right.
Um, and actually, in this moment, I'm just now connecting that, by the way, 20 years later. My first job was at the AMC movie theater, and I was a concession stand worker.
Mhm.
And I would, say, I'm gonna have the best popcorn. The customers are gonna come to me and say, "Can we have the popcorn that girl pop?" Like, that's just how I've always been. And
Mhm.
just moving forward in my career and working with some of the biggest people at in my early 20s, honestly, I learned so much. That that was the best training, testing ground because I went in full throttle because being a young Black woman in the early 2000s who wanted to be a costume designer, now there are a couple of us, right? Then
Mhm.
there were none of us. So at 21, I didn't have a mentor. At 22, I didn't have anyone to show me the ropes. There was no
Mhm.
one to say, this is how you do it.
Right.
It just wasn't. So I had to literally learn on the playing field. I had to take note of what everyone else was doing and kind of just, as this person does it this way and this person does it that way and kind of find my footing and just having the trust of a Tyler Perry, a Denzel Washington, a Ben Affleck, a Top Black to say, we trust this girl because she is Green Mile. Like whatever
Mhm.
she's going to try to do, she's going to put her best foot forward. And did I have errors? Absolutely. Do I still have errors? Absolutely. But do I try my best? 1000%. And I think that's what kind of set me apart and still does because I will work harder. I will learn the craft as fast and be the most creative, save the budget. There's so many things that I learned along the way that I don't think school could have taught me. I don't think, you know, getting a master's in costume design history would have taught me, right? There's
Yeah.
certain things that I have learned from having the opportunity to work with Oscar winning and legends. I mean, Denzel Washington, it's just, and when you're in it, you don't realize it. But when you take a step back and like, wow, I really did do this. I did this and I'm proud of myself. I think I've done a fantastic job being a first generation American and a,
Mhm.
child of immigrants who didn't know that costume design was even a career. So I'm super elated for even the future because I kind of feel like this is the beginning of my career in a
Oh,
weird
you were
kind of
just
way.
getting started.
I really feel like that. I turned 40. I should be telling my age in just a few weeks, and I have this thing of like, this is actually the beginning of my career and I'm so excited for the future. So,
Mhm. Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, like, I mean, obviously, like, all that hard work, like, allows you to be in the room with people who similarly,
Yeah,
like, they don't take mediocre for an option, right?
absolutely.
Like, it's all about excellence. So that's
Yeah.
amazing. I do have to give you your flowers. I will say Bel Air has been one of my favorite shows to watch,
Oh,
very specifically
thank
because
you.
of the style. As somebody who has gotten much deeper into fashion and menswear over the last
Yeah.
few years, that is the one show where there's a couple websites, I'm blanking on them right now, but like you can like research what episode and then they try to find like the brands that everybody's.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm literally like, okay, like, is that still in stock? Like, I was like, oh, that looks nice, but
Oh.
I can't afford that, So it's just kind of like, but you've done such a wonderful job. And for
Thank
the
you.
folks who don't know, the final season is airing in a few weeks, so please make sure to check that out. But you've done such a great job with that. How do you combine your inspiration and vision for these characters while also kind of meeting the actors themselves halfway with their own personal styles and how they envision and embody who they're playing?
I will say that our showrunner, Carla Waddles Banks, she is amazing at letting department heads be creative, and we all have a voice.
Hmm.
And and as parallel as that is also with the actors, I think I was able to build a trust with them and knowing their characters just as much as like I'm into every single individual actor and their character just as much as they are. And when I'm dressing the character, I'm not dressing the person, right? How will how do I want the audience to see the story being told? And what story is being told? And what colors do we want to see? What textures do we want to see? How do I help the talent tell this story through their costume, right? And
Hmm.
so I will say it's very collaborative, and without having the trust from my showrunner and the actors, it's no way that it'll be the way it is. But I think it just really starts with making sure that the story is being told. Like we want to make sure we tell the right story and how we want the story to be received. And a question I always ask myself is, what do I want to leave the audience with? Right? How do I want them to feel? And that I think is parallel to how the actor wants to, how do they want to communicate this storyline to the audience? And I think because we're all so parallel in the same goal,
Hmm.
and finding those moments and finding the right silhouettes and the colors and the textures and the layers. I think we're all so parallel in finding that it all just comes together in one unique, beautiful voice, and we're able to tell that story. And one of my things is I just want to make Black people look beautiful.
Yes,
And that's just it, and we come in so many different colors and textures, and when I say colors and textures, we could have the same job and live on the same street, but we are two different people,
absolutely.
and that's the texture that I like to showcase. This family lives in Bel Air, but, every character is different. There are not many shows there's some shows where there's, like, I don't know if I can say this or not, but there's a token Black person, whether it be a man or a woman, right? And that person dresses like the token Black person, right? I had an actor on a show, well, not my show, but I had an actor communicate to me that they went in for a fitting. They were the only Black gentleman on the show. They went in for a fitting, and the costume designer said, "Sorry, we don't have any Jordans."
Yeah, that would evoke a reaction out of me. So
So that just shows you how people misunderstand Black people, Black men. Just
yeah,
because I'm a Black man doesn't mean I want to wear Jordans, or does my character, the character doesn't even, and this is a very, very big show, by the way. But the designer goes, "I'm sorry, we don't have any Jordans." And it just doesn't give the layer and the texture that we have as Black people, and that's something I like to show on Bel Air is that every character is different.
yeah,
Every single character has its own individual unique style, and every Black person, whether you're into anime, whether you like horror films, whether you're an executive, you find a representation of yourself in someone in the show.
yeah,
And that's kind of whether you're goth, there's someone you identify with. Um, Not just storyline, but the way they look and feel and carry themselves. And that's the kind of stories I want to tell. That's kind of like the little razzle dazzle I want to leave the audience with of finding themselves invoked in a character and a person through the storytelling of costumes. Right. So that's the ultimate, one of the ultimate goals for sure.
Got it. And it's so interesting, and I'm even frustrated hearing that story about that actor. But it also, beyond like we're not a monolith, like we can be multiple, right? Like we
Absolutely.
don't
Yeah.
have to only embody the one type, right? It's like, oh,
Yeah.
well, like, sure, I love rocking J's, but like I also look the best when I walk into a room with a
Yeah.
suit on, right?
Yeah. And you'll
So
see that a lot in season 4.
okay.
Actually, you'll see that everyone, not everyone, but there's some characters who can do a little bit of both,
Hmm.
right? Who does have the versatility that you didn't maybe not have thought that they would have had. And it'll shock some people, but it'll be like, oh, well, that is life.
Yeah.
Right? Life changes you, and as you navigate different seasons, so does the way you dress. So does the way you carry yourself. When you go through different things and things happen in your life, you kind of start to embrace change in a good way. So you'll see that in season 4 for sure.
I love it. That actually leads me to my next question, which is,
Oh,
and because I'm sure it's multiple things, right? But I'm very sad that the show is going off the air,
I
but
know. We're all
I'm
so
sure
sad.
it'll end in the most amazing way. But as the costume and wardrobe designer, what were you trying to like in the show with from a styling perspective? Obviously, you said like yeah, like they can be multiple things and have multiple styles, but did you decide to take like another step in terms of risk because this was the last season, or kind of what was your mentality like going into the like as it's been filmed?
I'll just start off saying that we're all heartbroken that our show is on this last season. We're all so terribly sad, but everything good must come to an end. We all know that.
Hmm.
Um, and as I was going out on this season, I just wanted to leave people with a gift. That's kind of like, um, there's some last moments in the last episode, last couple of episodes, but particularly the last episode where I felt I wanted to connect and kind of like make it 360. And not that we, you know, um, did anything as far as like what Will or Uncle Phil wore in the original thing. We didn't do any of that, but it could have been some color story, texture story. Um, and just leaving, one of the main things I pride myself in as well is using brands of color, not just domestically, but internationally. I, again, am of Nigerian descent, so this was just Lagos Fashion Week. I'm very, connected with using whether it be Nigerian designers, Ghanaian designers, Colombian designers, Venezuelan, like I will pull in designers from all over the world. So I wanted to, and I hope that people have seen that throughout the couple of years, of when they do their research. Where did you get that from? It looks different. Of course, we use, local designers for sure in LA and domestic designers here that are contemporary. But my hope is to just leave people with a little extra razzle dazzle. With designers from all over the world and just to connect us that we're all connected and we're all similar. We're all really the same and we all have the same kind of stories if we dig really deep and also just connecting the original show with our show. So there were many different things I was doing throughout the season.
Hmm.
Um, but I wanted to just make sure that I left people with the everlasting beautiful taste of our show, Bel Air, and what we did for the culture.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, no, I honestly can't wait to see it. So I will be very much locked in the next couple weeks and months. So
Yay!
Um, and you touched on this point earlier in our conversation, but especially as one of the first, or one of few, or one of the only black people, black women that is on set specifically for designing costumes and wardrobes. And you've mentioned in interviews before that it's really important for you to continue to pave the way and help prop up and bring up other people that are earlier in their
Yes.
careers, or honestly like wherever they are in their professional journey. How are you looking to continue doing that? I know you just mentioned making sure to bring in Black designers, whether domestic or international, but any other way to be able to platform these folks, especially with the political climate that we're in right now.
Whew, yes, absolutely. With film and TV, it's such a hard space to get into. It's almost like there's so many glass ceilings to just press through and get through that it makes it very challenging for us costume designers to kind of like just bring anyone in, right? And the first thing studios will always say is it's insurance, right? And I can kind of see that, right? Because if something falls on someone, whether it be a rack or a light, they can sue the company
Yeah.
for whatever reason. So it's really hard to, you just can't have an intern on set that you just meet and want to give an opportunity to. So that's kind of hard. On the other side of that, there is like maybe one or two positions for the most part in the costume department that we call a production assistant. And most times it's someone who's entry level, right? Someone who's learning, who's open and eager, but you really have to be the best of the best to kind it's an entry point, but you still have to have some kind of like level. I won't even say a fashion of just like time management, being responsible, eager to learn, those kind of like those entry level things you actually do need, right? Because a
Mhm.
lot of times people don't realize, and I'm the same as well when I initially got into filmmaking, that it's not about all every show is different. But filmmaking is not about fashion. And that's something that many young, thriving creatives, find out as they're in. And like, whoa, this is a lot of it's a lot of research. It's a lot
Yeah.
of organizing. It's a lot, and also a lot of manual labor, believe it or not. Um, and so, I always ask, what do you actually want to do? Because sometimes that definition is like a fashion editor.
Yeah.
That definition is a stylist, that definition is a buyer,
Hmm.
right? So I always like to gauge um the exact thing that somebody wants to do, because what I want to do is I want to help you get to your goal. Right? I want
Right.
you to experience this, but if you ultimately don't want to do something and you come in, you can be detrimental to the department.
Yeah.
Right? If we're working a show that is 6 months, 10 months, and you find out 2 months into it, "Oh my god, I hate this. This is not what I thought it was gonna be."
You're not putting your all into it, so.
Yeah, and so and so what I like to do genu generally is, if I have, like, a short form project, whether it be a live show, whether it be like um I just did like a live show that was about 3 weeks, right? And that's when someone can come in, and I had like 2 young girls intern to kinda see, like, I need 100 bags, unzipped. We need to make this mood board. This is how you make the mood board. So I think it's really coming in or having someone come in on the smaller projects
Hmm.
just to kinda get their feet wet. And that kind of like gives them a prelude to like what it looks and feels like. So when the bigger project comes, they kind of know what the footing is going to be. So I'm always looking for someone who's available to kind of like come with me on those smaller projects, right? And kind of see, because or even I just also did a short, and that's also a great learning because those are like down and dirty, and you get to like have the experience of doing all the things. You get to be on set. You get to come with me shopping. You get to, you're in the fittings because it's fast, right? And
Hmm.
so I think is having the experience in those smaller, shorter projects that I like to have people on, versus the bigger projects that like the studio will haggle you for having someone on set and that sort of thing. So yeah, I'm always open to like eager, hardworking, green mile. It's so funny you said earlier something about excellence. And literally every interview I have, I tell everyone I truly operate in excellence. That is just, there's no other. The green mouth stuck, by the way. I don't know how to uh, give mediocre or be mediocre, and so
Hmm.
I want that same energy when we're doing the work, right? Because it's a lot of hard work that we
Yeah,
do.
I believe
It's
it.
not. It's not like you know, glitz and glam as people think it is. I don't want to say that it's not fun. Like we're not doctors and we're not saving lives. That's like the thing everyone says, but it's a lot of hard work on your mental health, your physical health. You're away from your friends and family. We work 12 to 14 hours a day. It's hard. It's hard. And so when you come in, you have to be able to have your boots on the ground, right? We don't wear heels. We wear tennis shoes to work every day, you know?
Yeah,
It's a lot of hard work and a lot of things happen simultaneously. Lots of fires are put out. Um, so yeah, I'm always looking for someone that's hardworking and for them to know that it's just not about fashion. Because it's really not. I can work on a show that's a period piece about homelessness in the 1970s,
yeah,
and I'm researching homeless, individuals in the 1970s, and none of it is
mhm,
fashionable. So costume design is more so storytelling. That's kind of what I compute it as. It's how do you want to tell this story and how do you want the audience to feel?
yeah, absolutely. No, I definitely agree. Let's switch gears just for a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, Obviously, like your Rolodex of the brands you've worked with, I'm sure is very long. But regardless if you've worked with them or not, what are some of the brands that you think are doing really well right now? It can be streetwear, it could be domestic, international. I know I'm like widening the scope, but what are the brands when you think like, oh my gosh, like these are my favorite brands, either to for you to personally wear or to style somebody in? What do you really love right now?
It's so hard. That is so hard, especially wrapping a show like Bel Air because every one is different. So I just know that I love different brands for different things that they offer.
Mhm.
One of my favorite brands that I actually through and through love is Sandro.
Yep.
I think it fits so many bodies
Mhm.
and it's just it's streamlined. If you want to do they have some high ticket items, low ticket items, but if you have on a Sandro piece, you might stand out, you might not, but you'll look pulled together and sharp, right? So I would say Sandro is one of my favorite pieces to use on a show, brands rather. There's a brand called Orange Culture, Nigerian brand that I
Mhm.
wholeheartedly love that is very artistic, creative and forward thinking and futuristic and that sort of thing. I love Orange Culture. Um, I mean, I love the Chanels, I love the Tom Fords, I love the Etros, I love the Brunelli. I love all the brands. So that's also hard. A brand I used a lot this season was Hugo Boss for men.
Mhm.
Um, I've always kind of used them, but I used a lot of them this season. I love Suit Supply. Just a man in a beautiful Suit Supply suit is also very well received. Margiela. I've used a lot
Yep.
of Margiela as well. They were yeah. Helmut Lang, I love. So it's just like for different things, just what am I trying to convey?
Yep.
You know? So there's not like one brand I just will stick to. Just
Mhm.
depends on what story. Again, just circles back to like what story am I being am I telling, right? So there is no default brand per se.
Yeah, and I didn't think there was. I left it open and,
Yeah, it doesn't.
just to kind of pick your brain. I'm like, "Oh, what does she really like right now?" So,
Yeah. Yeah,
awesome.
there's definitely a plethora of them. Yeah. I know I'm forgetting so many, but there are lots.
Sure, sure, sure. We've been talking about storytelling and being creative and getting outside of the box and trying new things. where do you draw your inspiration from? Either, between projects or when you're on set working with a new director, working with other actors you haven't worked for, like where does that creativity really come from?
That's such a good question because I think I'm just inspired by my surroundings, by my environment. Most importantly, like, my family,
Mhm.
my mother, for sure, she's passed away, but truly inspired by her when I go back and look at her pictures and what she was wearing and what she was doing and how she was dressing and, my culture of, like, where I'm from. I'm inspired by the people of Nigeria wholeheartedly and how creative everyone is and different. Um I also like to just people watch. I I love to, like, go online and seeing what people are doing in, like, Argentina, how they're you know what I mean? Just to kinda see what's happening, but I think the world inspires me. The
Mhm.
people around me inspires me. The youth inspires me. Um and also, when I'm reading a script, right, just different things start to pop in my head and populate and like, oh, maybe this and maybe that. And when I see a piece, I'm always wanting to change something about it, whether it's adding, rhinestones to something or changing a button or adding a little bro. I'm always wanting to change something to make it mine. So it just but I will say I'm inspired mostly by the writing. If I'm reading something that starts to kind of like get the juices flowing as how I see the character and what this character looks like.
Mhm.
A lot of times when I'm reading a new script, I always make a playlist for the show that I'm doing that helps me understand the character even for myself.
Mhm.
Just making them like a musical playlist of maybe like 5 to 7 songs of what this person listens to, and then from that, I kind of delve into, like, what those people look like who listen to this kind of music, right? I start to, like, research the artists and research their following and kind of, like so there's so many different ways I get inspired, but one of my that's the nugget I'm dropping actually, but,
Okay.
it's making a playlist for this talent, right? This character on the page that you've never met, that you're just reading their story, you're reading how they communicate to others in the story, and I just make them a musical playlist from what I think I'm receiving from the story, right? Um, and just kinda start there, and kind of like working backwards to kind of like peel the layers and get to learn who this person is a little bit more and kind of working that way.
That's beautiful because I mean, at our core, like that's where you're really pulling
Yeah,
from. That's
exactly.
that's awesome. Speaking of following, I follow you on Instagram, and I was so excited to see you announce that you just got signed with CAA recently. So
Oh, thank
huge congratulations.
you.
What did that mean for you, like just as a person, for like as a black woman that's a costume designer, like like when that ink dried, like what was that feeling?
I'm still floating, honestly. It's about, I mean, 5 months in now, and I'm
Mhm.
still like, "God, thank you."
Yeah.
Um, when I started my career, there were n I know I said it previously, but there were not a lot of women who looked like me, who did what I you know, do or, did back then being a entry level costume designer and the opportunities that were given to them with less experience was always like a gut punch,
Hmm.
as I was working hard, being Green Mile, I just felt like I just wasn't like getting there. And there's so many reasons we won't go into why that is and still is, right, for a lot of us. And, um, but meeting with CAA, meeting with my agents, Oren and Aaron, and knowing how much they believe in me, rooting for me, and here to like bring my career to the next level. And that's why I say I feel like it's also part of the beginning because I have done so much, but there's so much more to do, right? But having that happen to me was like one of the best things ever. It's always been a goal, right? And you set goals for yourself based on different tiers and times you are in your life. And
Mhm.
so I think it happened at the right time, the right moment. But I'm ecstatic. It's going to be a great partner, or it is a great partnership. I have amazing agents who are funny and amazing and support me and are rooting for me. And I'm just so excited. I'm so excited to see with one of the biggest agencies in the world.
Mhm.
Um, I'm ecstatic. It's more meaningful than I can ever put into words, honestly. So yeah, I'm excited.
That's awesome. As you continue to go through your career, and I know we touched on it just a little bit earlier, but what are some of the other things that you hope the industry makes in terms of changes? Whether that's easier for you to do your job better, or to bring more people into the industry. Kind of, what are some of those changes that you would like to see as your role that you play on set?
You know, that's a very good question because there there are lots of changes. However, one of the things that see myself kind of continuing to do with costume design, but also in addition to is creative producing, right? Because being a designer who has 20 years experience, there's so much I have to offer to the mid-level writer or mid-level producer or showrunner that I think is part of that like school can't show you or teach you, right? Um I recently produced a panel and spoke on it with other department heads, and we spoke to some fellowships.
Hmm.
And the information that we shared with them was priceless. They were so thankful because there's information that we know as keys and as department heads of big shows that if you've never been on a set before as a writer or a producer, that you kind of don't know how to answer the question or how to pivot when you're in it, right?
Hmm.
So one of the changes I hope to see is a lot of seasoned veteran department heads giving their expertise to mid-level or entry-level producers or directors, because sometimes they can have another writer show them the ropes and that sort of thing. But when you kind of have like that firsthand costume designer, production designer kind of show you of because every department head thinks of something, we see something different than what you wrote,
Mm.
right?
Yep.
So we want to be able to communicate that to you in our language, right? Because you can write about this is set in the 1920s and someone has a futuristic, telepathic vision of 2020, of the year 2020, and this happens and that happens. And so we want to tell that story the same way you wrote it, but this is how we tell the story. And what is the key thing you actually want to tell, because this can be received different ways, so we can help you get to that the most creative way, the most budget friendly way, the safest way,
Hmm.
because there's a lot of danger when some people are right,
Yep.
where there's an explosion, a spot, like what does that mean? Maybe your budget doesn't allow that, but let's still try to tell that same story. But maybe this is how I can do it, so you can tell the same story from my profession, right? From my perspective. And so, yeah, so I'm hoping to bridge the gap between keys department heads and newer showrunners and newer directors and newer writers, and becoming more of like a creative liaison producer. And it's novel. This is something that's really new, and most will say that it hasn't been done, but change is good, and that's how we grow and we get
Yep.
stretched. And so that's what I'm hoping changes in the industry, and that's something that I'm working on
Hmm.
to kind of be that voice, right? Because what's happening is a lot of shows that you may love only has a season 1. And you're like, "Why didn't it come back? We love this show. It had good ratings."
Yep.
And there's so many reasons behind why it didn't come back for a next season. Not our show, obviously, but there's some shows that only got a season 1, right? And you're like, "Why didn't it come back?" And it's mostly shows of color. There's so many reasons, but if I can help keep our shows on air and tell our stories in the most authentic, safest, budget-friendly ways based on my knowledge and what I have to offer, I think that is something that is beyond amazing that people can offer. And there are others like me that have 20, 30 years in the business who have the same thing to offer, but sometimes we don't know our value and what we have
Mhm.
to give to the studios or to the production companies and that sort of thing, right? So that's what I'm hoping to open the door of. So manifesting that.
Wonderful. And honestly, I think that can be said of most industries, right? Like that
Yeah.
information sharing and, first time, I think of some of my friends recently that are first time directors, senior
Mhm.
directors in corporate America. And, luckily most of them, have had a community that they've built over time to say like, hey, like the stakes are different now because, you have more visibility into the C suite or, like you're
Yeah.
owning for all these different things, right? And so, were it not for that information sharing, and quite frankly, this, like, there's some times where, like, hey, like, I have to nail this, or this could be my only shot for a while.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. We have a very, filmmaking is such a unique industry. You can have, and it's almost like music, right? All of these creative industries, you can have a wonderful career or you can blow it
yeah,
with one opportunity. And like, there is no training ground really. They have fellowships and that, but like, there's nothing like being on a set.
yeah,
It's just, you can't, you just can't, you just can't experience it even if you are shadowing someone. It's if you're not responsible for putting out the fires, that weight, that anxiety, that problem solving that you have to do, it's something about it, right? So I think it's having someone to help navigate and guide you and let you know, "No, this is the right decision you're making if you do it this way, and this is why."
right,
So,
right.
yeah.
Okay, absolutely. Well, we've talked about so many cool things that you've done past and present, but last question I have for you before I let you go, and it's okay if we can't touch on it, based on, conversations with your agent or contracts and any of that, but what are some of the things that you can talk about that we might be able to expect from you next year in terms of projects you're working on or any other thing creative endeavor wise?
Oh, yes. So, thanks for asking, put that disclaimer out. But yes, there are many things that are in the works. A show that I'll be working on in 2026 that is not really out there just yet.
Okay.
But there are amazing things happening, features and a TV show. I'm just kind of excited for the world to see, obviously, this season of Bel Air, but like there's so many layers to unpack and peel after Bel Air is aired that we'll get to see and make sure everyone tune into my Instagram and Google or whatever website and follow and see. But there's amazing things in the work and some collaborations as well happening. So I'm excited for 2026.
Awesome, awesome. Well, again, congratulations on all of your recent success. Queen Sylvia, thank you for joining again.
Thank
And
you. Awesome. Thank you for having me, Nick. This was so fun. Thank you so much.